Well, hello and welcome to the Rugby Ruckus Tight 5. Ben Kimber here in Sydney. And I think, Morgan Turinui, you're still in Sydney, aren't you, mate? Though we lost you last week because I think you were down smuggling your family across the New South Wales-Victoria border, weren't you, mate?
Yeah, well, I suppose luckily heading south, they're pretty happy to have you in Melbourne. They just don't want you to come back out. So, yeah, it was a tough day Sunday. The family had a good holiday. Spent almost a month up in Sydney, so I actually missed everything happening in Melbourne. But then with work and school starting up again, couldn't delay it any longer, and the real world gets in the way. So kids enjoyed having smoothies every morning at Melonhead at Coogee and going for a swim and getting a wave and that, and then back to where all the ferals in Melbourne, unfortunately, back to school, and hopefully things improve down there. We might see each other soon. That's why I've got time to do this now. No kids to annoy me.
Well, that's it, mate. We've had some other Melbourne types up here. We're going to talk about the games from the weekend. Some good footy, some not so good footy, but we had the Rebels up here. 2 games to get through. Let's look at the agenda for today, mate, on the Type 5. We've got Peter Hewat, former teammate of yours, former Waratah player, and now a member of the Brumbies coaching staff. The Brumbies are travelling pretty well. Going to be good to talk to Pete, understand what they're up to and how they're getting into it. We're going to go for the player of the round. We like to go through each game, mention the players who are looking good, talk about the games a little bit, show a little bit of footage. We're going to go through the fullbacks today, and I'm really pleased to have Peter Hewat on for that. Clearly one of the guys whose stats are through the roof as one of the greatest ever Waratah fullbacks with the numbers that he pulled in those teams back in the day. Coach's Corner, Morgs. Instead of Play of the Day, I've decided to call it Coach's Corner now. You're going to run through a key play from the games on the weekend and break it down for us. And then we've got to talk Joseph Suaalii, the $1 Million Teenager, and what's going on there. So, mate, plenty to get through in this show. But without further ado, let's bring in a man who I think is parked up down there in Canberra. Peter Hewat, mate, former Waratah player. Plenty of stats I could go through, mate. One of the great point scorers for the Waratahs. But now he's a Brumbies man. How are you, Pete?
Very well, mate. I haven't spoken to you for a long time, and I might have to speak to you a lot more often with the rap you're giving me, mate. Very overrated.
Morgs, you'd have good memories of playing footy with this man?
Yeah, mate. One thing to say about Huey, like we forget sometimes when we talk about phases and tactical and technical stuff. The goal of the game is to score points, and not many guys score more points and more prolifically than Pete did. One of the great single-season performances in 2005 with the Waratahs. Gee, he had some quality players giving him time and space, but I must admit he did score points well. And he kicked the goals when Blake scored tries for him. So that was, mate, when you got back at a guy's season, mate, it was amazing.
When you got guys around you taking the heat off you, mate, like yourself, Rogers, Takiri, they got to worry about you, Blake, so I just sneak under the radar, mate. It was great.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll scratch.
You're going to win.
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, mate.
Always.
That's enough of a love fest, fellas. Let's get into it. Pete, just tell us where you've been, mate. Well, I'm really been pleased to get you on because you've got a great perspective for us at the moment. This year in Australian Super Rugby, we're talking a lot about the youngsters. We're talking about a new generation and a new approach. We've got a new coach. We're going to have a new CEO, but particularly on the playing front, the last few years, tell us where you've been because you've been in charge of a few teams where you've seen some of these blokes coming through.
Yeah, it's obviously been my 3rd season with the Brums, so look, really enjoying my role down here as an assistant coach and obviously working on our attack. But last year I was lucky enough to work with the schoolboys under 18s team, which we went over to New Zealand and had a successful tour over there. And it was just really good to during that period just get around the country and just see the actual amount of talent that we have coming through the pathways. And look, the amount of as I said, ability and talent some of these kids have got is phenomenal. And it's just, I suppose, now how we produce them into the next level and keep them in our game.
Pete, in particular, mate, give us a few of the young blokes in your squad, the names that we should be keeping an eye on. I think there's a few of them we know by now, but who should we be keeping an eye out for?
Yes, Billy Pollard, the hooker. He's down here at the Brumbies. He's again a phenomenal athlete. He's got a lot of work to do on his set piece, and he's doing that hard work down here under the guidance of Dan and Laurie Fisher. So he's here. Zane Nongor is a tight head prop from. He's in the red squad at the moment. He's a mobile tight head. And then you look at the backs, Lockie Albert, who's a 9, Rajan Pasatoa, was a 10. Josh Fluke, who was our skipper in that system, he's up at the Reds. I think he's made his debut the last few weeks. And then the two flyers, Tolakula and Joseph Suaalii, who I'm sure we all know about at the moment.
Mate, we're going to actually cover off the Joseph Suaalii story at the end of the show, but I just want to get your perspective. You coached him. Some of the superlatives that are being thrown around about him. How did you rate him as a player, and what sort of a player did you see?
To be honest, athletically, freak of nature. He was only 15, playing against 18-year-olds. Very, very good in the air. He's long stride. Very, very skillful. Look, he's got a lot of ability. I just feel for the kid a little bit at the moment. I think he's obviously a lot being said about him. I think rugby's strengths is probably the Olympics and World Cups. I'm not aware of any of the monetary figures, but he's going to be a good player.
Mate, so what sort of a style people talked about Israel Folau? Is he more of a Peter Hewat type? What do you think he is, pal?
He'd be more of an Israel Folau. Very good in the air, like just athletically gifted. He's a freak basketballer, I think. Freak long jumper, freak runner. Just a gifted person when you look at all the athletic ability. Very, very good. And just got nous, he's a good kid. Like, he spent a lot of time asking questions. Like, rugby, he hasn't got obviously the finer details, but he spent a lot of time asking questions in terms of where he needed to be from an attack and defence point of view. So he was really eager to learn, which really struck me as, for a 15-year-old kid, very, very mature.
Nice. Morgs, what have you seen from Huey, his impact on the Brumbies over the last couple of years, mate? How have you seen Huey's backline play coming together?
Yeah, it's been good. Well, there's a lot of pressure on him, obviously, because I wouldn't always have picked him. He always had a great footy brain. I wouldn't have always picked him as going into coaching. And then the grandmaster himself, Eddie Jones, pushed him into coaching. So, gee, there's must be some expectation there.
No pressure.
But no, what I've enjoyed is you can see the way they've sensibly and pragmatically tried to evolve their game. They haven't gone, we're not kicking the ball ever again, or they've gone, we mauled well before, let's forget about that and just run everything. I can see layer upon layer over time building into their game. You can see what they're trying to do. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes they have flat spots. I think the way Fox with the first two tries for people that watched it the other night, I think that if I was guessing, having not seen one training session from the Brumbies, I would say that's exactly what they've been practicing, exactly what they love seeing at training. And it would have been, I would have thought, it'd be good to find Huey's opinion. It would have been really gratifying to see that transference from, whiteboard, or Huey's brain to whiteboard to training pitch to the field. So that must have been a good thing. And that's what we're seeing from the Brumbies. They're a much more complete side as time goes on and continuing to do special things in the game.
Huey,
mate,
way you go, buddy.
Yep. As an attack coach, like you do a lot of time with that unstructured play, and it was a layer of our game that when Dan and myself and Laurie came together was, we always had set piece. It was always strong. The maul was strong, our scrum was strong, but we thought to win a competition you need to have a more all-round game, and we've spent a lot of time on that unstructured side of things. And it took us a while to peel back the layers and really get that into our DNA. We spoke about it the first year or two, and we saw glimpses, but I think the guys are a lot more comfortable with playing that sort of style of rugby. And a big thing we changed was the people we signed. You think of Simone's, Wrights, Pete Samu's, even your Will Millers, Solomone Carter, just guys who could actually play the style of rugby that we wanted to install. So. Look, we're not the finished product by no means. We've still got a lot of work to do. That we're still having flat spots in our game, but to see those couple of tries early last night was, very special, very nice as a coach.
And do you find those players rarer and rarer to find? Do you find, I found a little bit, and you know a lot more than me, is that some of the players have to unlearn what they've learnt coming through our systems and pathways or whatever to actually be taught footy again?
100%, mate. Spot on. I think the rarity of actually footballers being around, not being so structured. I think that's why it's so important as a young age that, you know, they're getting taught just to play footy, not to be so worried about structure. And because you think of all the great players, and you know, you think of the Kiwi teams that, you know, obviously everyone talks about how good they are, and you know they are, but they're just footy players, and that's so unique and so special to have as a coach. If you've got guys that know how to play footy and just aren't too worried about, you know, structure. The structure is always going to be in the game, but if you've got someone who can just turn something into nothing, turn something special from nothing, it's just such an advantage to have in your team. And we're lucky enough to have a couple of guys out wide and through our back row that can do that.
Huey, particularly, I think since the restarted Super AU, the Brumbies set piece hasn't been as dominant. You know, earlier in the year and last year, the set piece was really something the Brumbies were relying on. You've been challenged a lot more in that space, haven't you?
Yeah, we have, and that was a pleasing thing about last week against the Tars. I think you know, historically, when our set piece hasn't functioned, we've struggled as a team. I think back to the semi-final last year against the Jaguares over in Argentina. Our line-out didn't function, and we struggled to perform, and we panicked a little bit. So I think the learning out of that we saw on you know, last week against the Tars is our set piece didn't function, but we were still able to find a way you know, and to grind a victory out there, which was a pleasing aspect of that game.
Cool. Guys, let's start talking about the two games from this weekend. I'm just going to throw up, Huey, the way that Morgs and I like to do this is we just talk about each game briefly, but we like to pull out 3 players from each game that are worth talking about. Morgs, the Rebels 29, Waratahs 10. Just talk us through these 3 guys, Morgs, the guys that we thought were worth having a chat about.
Yeah, I think the most salient point is obviously they're all from the same team. I thought the Rebels completely dominated the game, played the game on their terms, and gee, that scoreline could have been anything. The way they can, you know, the 80% thing they did extremely well. They just need that 20% cream on top to put teams to the sword. But in terms of territory, putting pressure on opposition, they're outstanding. Led by the game management of Matt Tamua, he's performing excellently well at 10, and he's not a natural 10 in his own head. He wants to play 10, but accomplished in the inside centre position as well. So that's a great string to his bow to be able to play both. And his game management, you know, really led them around the park on the back of the industry of Matt Phillip, who was you know, at his best, hardworking, but also he made some of his runs and his involvements and his work count. Not just about numbers, getting numbers up, but just the quality of the work. So that was another benchmark game for Matt Phillip. Hopefully he's a guy that will be able to hold on to and won't lose to money overseas. And Marika Koroibete did what Marika Koroibete does. He gets off his wing, he chases the ball, he works hard, he keeps showing up. You know, what he does exceptionally well. And they're the big 3 ones to come out of that game, that's for sure.
Mate, I just wanted to show the Koroibete try because it was exactly what we talk about a lot on this show. Is he never ever stops. He puts in 100%. I talk sometimes about, you know, one of the differences I see in New Zealand rugby is more players putting in 100% all the time. Koroibete here, back of the ruck, and this is exactly what he did in 2 tries against the All Blacks in that big Perth win. He twice from the base of the ruck, just kept eyes up, made the most of it, and always looking for work. Huey, you'd have to enjoy that in players when you see those guys who just never stop.
Yeah, and it's a big thing we try and, you know, focus on down here with our wingers as well. Is, you know, they're the most dangerous players on the field. That, you know, your back 3 players, and you just want to get them involved. You know, we sort of give our guys a free rein, and obviously you can see down at Melbourne that, you know, Koroibete's got a free rein, and he's always dangerous when he's around the ruck. He's either those little sneaky pick and goes, or he's running nice hard lines around the ruck trying to catch out, you know, tight forwards. So, you know, he's a threat all around the field. He's always working inside balls when he's going to the other side of the wing. So, yeah, good players to have. They just want the ball in their hands, and you want your best and most powerful players with the ball in their hands as much as possible.
I just want to chase that, Benny. I just want to chase that thread about giving players free rein. I think that looks like what's happened at the Rebels. I think with Enrique, you have to give him free rein. When you see, you know, probably the role of an Andrew Kellaway on the other wing, he's the one out there guarding the width, making sure that they've got those options out there, whereas Koroibete's free rein. Naisarani, when he's there, he seems to be a free rein player, and the likes of Phillip do the you know, the sort of black and white roles that need to be done within the game shape and structures that you have. Can you have only a couple of those free rein guys? Can you not give it to everyone? Say do whatever you want, or do you have certain guys you go right? You just chase the ball, do whatever you want, but another few guys have to just do the roles required.
Yeah, I think that's very important, mate. Like you don't want 3 or 4 guys having a free rein because you when you do decide to get back to some sort of structure, you've got no one to go to structure with. So look, and again, that's what's vital with having. I talked about before, having those natural footballers, is you want your natural footballers on the ball. And for us, it's the Tom Wrights, it's the Andy Muirheads. They're the style of players that we want having the foot in our hands. Sol Carter to an extent, but obviously Banksy following the ball. You've got to have a system where you have people holding edges, and we've got those in our team like your Pete Summers and whatnot who are good on edges. So. Again, mate, you've got to have a look at.
Sorry, mate.
You've got to have a look at the profile of your team. What's that?
I say we'll have a look at that in a second. Pete Summer out in the edges. Now, just before we switch on to the Brumbies game, Morgs, I copped it on Twitter from you and others because I suggested I was impressed with the Waratahs defence, right? And by that I meant late in the game it was still 1 try all. They hadn't had their line right. And I think my point was I went into that game thinking the Rebels should beat them by 20 plus. They should. When you look at the way the players the Rebels had, the time they've had together, this Waratahs team this year, I thought it wasn't a bad effort from that team. A Waratahs team I didn't expect too much from this year. Did you think I was a goose on Twitter, mate?
Yeah, I did. Well, they beat them by 19, so it was nearly 20 plus. No, they missed 30 tackles. Almost double digits clean line breaks. A few half breaks and 6 or 7 clean line breaks. That's not Super Rugby standard. This is we've talked about it ad nauseum. This is almost a free pass here for the Waratahs. Get as many young blokes with experience. You look at a team like the Brumbies, they're 3 to 5 years ahead in their cycle than what this Waratahs team have been left to be when just with the contracting evolution that we've talked about before has left them in this space. So we have to temper everything we say. But in terms of a defensive effort, look, their missed tackle count would be huge. That's not a good defensive effort, Benny.
I'll wrap the scramble, mate. I thought they shut them down the line plenty of times.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next game. One that would have made Peter Hewat pretty happy. 24 points to a duck egg for the Force. The Force, after a couple of big starts in their first couple of games, couldn't do it here against the Brumbies. Morgs, we've got 3 players up here, Simeone, Wright and Samu. You want to talk us quickly through these 3 boys?
Yeah, although that's probably the obvious ones. All the players did their job at the Brumbies, but we showed those first 2 tries in the first 5 minutes, and maybe we don't forget it. But I thought they continued to be very good all night. Wright continues to develop as a player, can play different positions on the field as well. He looks like another one that's dropped into that Brumbies environment over a few years and continues to improve. And Simone, the greatest example of that, had some time at the Waratahs, and that's what I love about the Brumbies. They make considered smart signing decisions. Will Miller, another inspired contracting opportunity that they took as well, and he's been excellent for them. But Simone just gets better and better. I know the commentary team last night talked about his kicking, which I'm interested to see from Huey, talk about the work done there. But the basics of his game, the running lines, the catch pass, the decision-making, the kicking, all parts of his game are improving. And Pete Samu, I'm a Pete Samu fan. Halsey's a huge Pete Samu fan. He's been banging on about him for years, and I'm increasingly more of a believer in him as a player because it's a bit like the Melbourne Storm with the Crusaders or playing in New Zealand. They play over there and they get on the plane and they get off a different player because of who they're playing around. But Pete Samu is just an excellent footballer and a special and important cog in that Brumbies setup. But Simone, I think also because of how much he's developing as a player and improving all the time, and also because of that performance on the weekend, he's my player of the round, that's for sure.
Yes, mate. We were both pretty comfortable giving that one, and I'm going to just bring up a couple of clips. But Pete, what have you thought of the way Simone's gone this year?
Mate, he's been very good. Like he's the glue in our team, mate. He's so important to us. The only game we've lost is the Highlanders game, and he didn't play, so he had the bumps. So he's a vital cog in our team. Look, when we signed him, we saw a lot of ability. I think it was just a matter of getting him into a system, showing him some love, and getting himself athletically in good nick and dropping some weight. And mate, he's been such a good player for us.
Mate, the reason I want to show this try as well for him in this game, this is him finishing off the try, but he actually, we talked about Korobiti guys who keep up the effort, keep 100% of the effort up. If we go right back to the start of this try, he's actually in this ruck, pulling guys out. That's him on the ground. He's going to leap up at the back of that ruck, and he's going to duck straight across and get into position ready to go. And so all of a sudden, he's here, ready to go. So he's gone from in the ruck, pulling blokes out, to making sure you've got the men where there's an opportunity and going straight there for it.
Spot on, mate. We review that every week, that sort of stuff. This is those double, triple efforts. And again, you see the power and you see, the finesse. You also see, like Simone, he sees football. He's another natural footballer. He's got all the catch pass skills. But he's also, what you don't see is the comms he gives our young 10. So Noah and BK, he's really helped those two, develop, which is crucial considering those guys have had, this is their first real year of Super Rugby.
And mate, the other thing I want to just ask about is his kicking game seems to be developing beautifully as well. He got a 50-22, and I'm just going to play that for you. But he seems to have this nice little short action that seems to be able to punch it, 40, 50 downfield. Here you're under a bit of pressure. The ball goes back. He goes back and cleans up, and all of a sudden, from going backwards with force players everywhere, he's just gone pop. And the next minute, you got a 50-22 and it's your feed down the field. This is a massive kind of game changer. Where's this kicking game coming from, mate? What sort of work's he doing on that?
Mate, he's always had he's probably our longest kicker. He's always had a long kick. It's just we've probably underused him in the past, in terms of having him as a clearance option or a kicking option for us. So we've really worked hard over the COVID break in particular, just sort of tightening a little bit with his action and actually you can get him confident in terms of using that big right foot because it's such a weapon for us. And, he does a lot of those. We don't really go into a game saying we're going to look for 50-22s, but we do practice the kicks. So our 9s, 10s, 12 and 15s, they do practice those kicks. But, it's just up to the players to see that space and hit it. So, look, he's really starting to get a nice all-around game with that. I think that kicking ability to his game.
Even just quickly, sorry, I'm probably going to ask the question I'm going to answer, but what I really like about it, even if it wasn't a 50-22 and you didn't get the feed, that's still a great play. You go from under pressure in your 100%. Own 40, you kick the ball, suddenly they're in their own exit zone, you get to put pressure on their line out. It's almost just a bonus, and you score from the ensuing line out off a multi-phase try with Miller in the left corner. But even without that, it's great practice for our players to be looking for that option. So I think this is a law, an experimental law that will help our players develop and become better players, no matter what happens.
100% agree, mate.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, Morgs, if you've seen people starting to notice it more. The 50-22 opportunity.
Well, what I haven't seen is teams really marking it a lot. It'll be interesting to see. If I'm playing the Brumbies and I'm thinking, well, if they get in, the Brumbies are great at 22-metre entries and converting those entries into points, and that's a huge KPI for winning games. There's elements of the game that are really important for winning games, and that's one of them. Now, here we can probably either disagree or say he's seen it, but if I'm playing the Brumbies, I'm thinking I need to keep them out of my 22. Yes, they're evolving their game to be able to score those long-range tries like we saw last time, but if I can deny them 22-metre entries on set piece, then I'm a big chance of denying them points. And that 50-22, teams will need to start marking that soon. And as we've talked about, the cause and effect of that is hopefully less people in the defensive line up near the halfway and more running of the ball.
Spot on, mate. 100% correct.
You can come on any time, Huey. This is going well.
Oh, but you're spot on that. Like, again, it's going to help our kickers. When they go to the next level. What's good about it is they're actually starting to look for that space now. You've got outside backs that are starting to look for that space. Kickers are going to improve, as you say. But then, what does that have? The flow and effect is they put an extra player back. So then we've got to start looking for space in the front line. So it's just, I think, a good rule to have. So we're actually starting to look for space rather than for bodies.
Yeah, nice. That's a nice segue. See, he's a natural in the show, Morgs. There you go. He segued us nicely into our next segment. We wanted to go through the Super Rugby fullbacks. Morgs, I wanted you to talk about what you're seeing across the board here from the guys in the 15 jerseys. It's such an important role, and there's an opportunity there, of course, but also to talk to Huey a little bit about what he might see in some of these players.
I think it's good to have Huey on maybe to talk about. Also, Huey, what are you looking for in a fullback these days in Super Rugby, and then one that could push on to Test footy? Like, what are the key core roles that you're looking for from your fullback, I suppose?
I think I think when you look at across our board in Australia, I think we're all good runners. So they're all pretty good runners. They're good kick returners. They can see space. They hit nice lines. What I like in a fullback is you can also hit lines, but you need to be a distributor and a creator. You look at the best 15s in the past. You think of probably your Ben Smiths, who had everything to his game. So he's an all-rounder. Like, he could run, he could pass, he could kick. He was great under the high ball, good defender. I just think, and something we're working with Tommy Banks down here, he's doing a lot of work on it. He's actually creating for others. So he's a great makes a lot of line breaks himself. But just then having that ability to create for others is a big thing for me.
Yeah, and so looking at the cattle we've got, it's probably, if you throw the graphic up again, Ben, it's interesting, I think, to talk through almost the bands that each of them are in terms of where they're at with their game. So Dane Halapetty's he's the finished product. He's the seasoned pro, top end of his career. Looked like a PCL injury coming off on the weekend. So that's got anything a little bit grave to it. He might miss a few weeks. I'm not sure how bad that will be. That it looked to me like a PCL. I'm sure we'll hear through the week. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there with him. But he's the finished product. If you're going to go, say if you're the Wallabies coach, you're going for a young 10, you might want the surety, the safety of that experienced fullback in Dane Halapetty. You know what you've got to get. Proven international experience. And then the next band down is probably the Maddox and Banks band, the exciting up-and-comer. We put the kiss of death on Maddox when we talked him up a couple of weeks ago.
He's had a slow couple of weeks, hasn't he, since that?
Yeah. Huey, if your forwards aren't going well, or your team's not going well, or your 9 and 10 are going backwards, and then there's, fullback, you're under pressure as well. So you're often, like any player in the back line, a slave to, how your forward pack's going, as we don't like to admit, but it is the truth. And then Banks, really settled program, good environment, in a team that wins more often than not. I know Huey mentioned that Simone was important when he missed that game, but off air, Huey said because he had the mumps and missed that game, that's why they lost to the Highlanders. So it's interesting what he says in public. But in that settled program, I see Banks coming on in leaps and bounds, and he's fast. He's a runner. I've said it before. He reminds me of a Chris Latham, and it's pretty much as high a compliment as I can give someone. The one I like as a footballer is Jack McGregor. He's probably got the furthest to go of the lot with Jock Campbell, and then also obviously Bryce Hegarty's a finished product. He's more of a utility player that can play well, knows his game well. He knows what he can do to a team, whatever number he has on his back. Jack McGregor, Australian Schoolboys captain, excellent player out of Riverview, played the 20, so he's trodden the well-trodden pathway. Had a bad ACL just coming out of school, which meant that his peers kicked off and kept going. Had some time in the Rebels program, went off to the Force, and now this is a player that Super Rugby AU is designed around, to give a young guy like that some opportunity to play the best players in our country week in, week out. So an exciting group of 15s, and there's some that are good 15s, like a Reece Hodge, that we don't mention because they're not playing there. So what we do have is a fair few 15s, and I think if you're Dave Rennie, it just depends where you want to go. What risk profile do you take, depending on balance of selection? And Huey's point about a ball player back there, does that mean you can pick more penetrative centres? If you have an erased Simone, do you need a second ball player at 15? So there's the balance of the back line as well. So interesting times going forward in Super Rugby AU and into whatever test season we have.
Huey, now back in the day when I used to report for the Herald and you and Morgs were playing, pretty sure that every off-season Morgs would say he'd lost weight and you'd say you'd gained weight. Now, has Tommy Banks gained a couple of kegs though?
He's mate. He probably put a bit upstairs around his shoulders and upper body. He obviously had that foot injury, so he's again. But Banks, he's starting to slowly warm up to things. So he obviously had his game last week. This week, he's just probably 1% to 2% off his best position, or best condition. I think he would have made a couple of line breaks last night if he was fully 100%. So I think when we're near the finish line and the whips are cracking, Banks will be at his best. I thought I'd put that in for you, Morgs.
Yeah, nice. I've got that reference.
I know Huey's got to take off, mate. I just want to share one clip with you boys before Huey goes for a comment. We know the standard at Chris Super Rugby Aotearoa has been exceptional, but there was just one play that just stood out on the weekend, and I just want your thoughts on it. You first, if you don't mind, Huey. But this is what looks like to be a most ridiculous piece of skill. I'll just play this clip. So Severis all the way through, massive pass across field. George Bridge, the half volley, chip ahead, and scores it. I mean, how hard is that, Huey? That looked absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
What's
that's not
that?
playing, mate. Oh,
Bang.
that's wow. Very, very special, mate. The what I like at the start, though, is where Reece gets into scrum half, passes it to his 9, then back on the inside. That's obviously a planned move, and I really like that. But then the skill in the end of the day, that's crazy.
This piece here was what you're saying was nice, where he goes the haul back to Reece. Beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. We've done that before. It's a little planned move of theirs, so I like it a lot. But again, it's just a footy player on the end, isn't it? Just playing footy. He's in the backyard there. He's done that 1,000 times before, and he does it on the big stage.
That's it.
I reckon I've seen the H-bomb do that at Manly Oval before. That's how your bag tricks, I reckon. But no, everyone's trying to find a way to exploit that first defender who drifts across field and doesn't get covered by either the 9 in the boot of the ruck or the neg side defender. And that's another innovative way that Chris has found to do it. And I'm sure you'll see a few teams copy it. That was great footy.
It was.
Very good. Very good.
And speaking of the H-bomb, I think I remember putting you in the paper for driving a signature white Valiant down to Manly Oval. Do you, mate? You remember that? Lording it up around Manly back when you were the H-bomb? No?
No,
right.
mate. No. Don't listen to Fry, mate. Has Fry been on here, has he?
Not yet, but we'll get him on, mate. We'll get him on.
He's not good enough. No. He wants to. He asks every week. I just keep saying no.
Beautiful.
Huey, look, we know you have to go, mate. We really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time, mate, and all the best with the Brums. It's been great to see the way they're going. A few more games yet to get through the season, so all the best, pal.
Awesome, guys. Thanks, you, and I really enjoyed seeing you guys again.
That's it. Catch you next time, buddy.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you soon.
All right, Morgs. Two items to go. Now, Coach's Corner. This is where we get you to give us a bit of an insight into a play you saw on the weekend to give those of us who probably aren't as up to speed on what's actually happening out on the field as people who are a coach, exactly what went down. There was one clip in particular you wanted to talk to, and I'll get that up while you tell us what you're going to do, buddy.
Yeah, so we obviously talk a lot about attack here and the machinations around attack. We thought we'd look at the other side of the ball defensively from the Brumbies Force game. We'll probably go through it phase by phase. So this is on the back of the Iro Simone 50-22, so it gives the Brumbies an opportunity. So first things you want to see, if you stop it there. So as that throw's gone in, Nick Frisby, you would have seen, he's in the tram tracks. And inside 22, some teams will defend either with a back rower out inside 10, just to give some starch to the line and to be able to get some line speed. Or they'll defend with their blind winger in the line inside 10. So if you see here, we play it on, go to first phase. Brumbies go straight in the 10 channel, try to get hard over the gain line. You see there that the Force have a back rower in the line, and John O'Lance makes a tackle. Now, if you stop it there, John O'Lance does exactly what I'm sure he's scripted to do. He makes the tackle and goes straight back to the blind side. He's done his job straight away. You see there, the blind winger for the Force is off screen. He's back on the blind side because the 7 makes the tackle. Top right of screen, Jack McGregor, the fullback, is on the outside of the ball. So in essence, the Force in the backfield have got a blind winger who can probably cover anything on the, as we're looking at it, if you're the Brumbies, the right-hand side of the post in the backfield. And they've got Jack McGregor on the open side, on the left-hand side of the Brumbies attack, who can cover anything in the backfield in their 22, which in essence means with Frisbee defending the edge of the line on the left-hand side, they've got a 13-man front defensive line. Let's go back to second phase. See this second phase play on. And Taifu makes the tackle there, jumps up, and then Marcel Braki makes the tackle, and the 12's there as well. So at the moment, the Force are pretty well set up. What you're looking to do on multi-phase is try and get your tight 5 in the middle of the park, especially your props. Then your back row outside them on both sides. And you're trying to split the field with your centres and your back line in essence, a 10 and a 12 and a winger, maybe return side, or a 10 and a winger return side, and open side, 1 or 2 of the centres and a winger. If you get that, you're pretty happy. You know, tight 5 in the middle, back rowers in the seam there, and then backs on the outside. Really good setup. And then all you do is you just slide your fold and you don't double around different guys. The issue the Force have at the moment is that Lance has done his job too. They've got both centres there, so they're pretty good. Marcel Braki here at the top of the screen, he's third last defender. He's got a prop on his outside. I think it's long bottom. When he gets an opportunity there here, it's really important that he swaps with that prop and gets to his outside. Because all we want is our quicker guys on the edge that can control the other team's quicker guys, or the other team's creative guys if we get into the 15-metre channels. So here's an opportunity for Braki to get outside the prop, and then the 12 for the Force has to make a decision whether he stays on this side of the field, or if the Brumbies backs have reloaded, he goes back to the long side, return side off screen, and then the Force don't need to change any numbers. All they do is come north-south in defence and just fold around in the same line. Guys don't have to almost leapfrog it. So let's play it on, Benny. The Brumbies play. They look pretty well set up here. Just remembering that Braki hasn't swapped on the outside with there. And you see there, Braki top of screen, Benny. Hopefully people caught it. He runs around behind the ruck, and he's now gone to the next side. And the 12's in nice and tight. Now, what the Brumbies do really well is very simply identify that the second last defender for the Force on that side of the field is a prop, and they just try and get a mismatch. So if you go back and play that phase again, they don't do anything special. So if with this pass goes, you'll see the pass go behind all their setup of pod. They don't waste any time with deception. They just get it to that mismatch. See that mismatch, which makes I think it's Bracey on the edge there, on the 14 side. Sorry, it's the wrong side for the Force. He has to stay connected to his prop, which lets Miller get on his outside, and that's all it takes for the Brumbies to score. The lesson here for the Force is they did a lot of good things right. They made their tackles. If you look at those rucks, they didn't overcommit defensively to the rucks, but that one chance, Marcel Braki, and we're singling out one player, but it happens all the time when defensive systems break down. So we're not trying to single him out for any specific reason. He has played a lot of winger, not a huge amount of time at 13. That one opportunity to swap with his prop, be on his outside, and I don't think the Brumbies score that try there anyway.
Mate, that's an excellent point. So basically the breakdown you're talking about in the defensive line is that a prop was left as the second man in off the winger for about 5 phases there. So instead of Braki switching him out, pushing him back in towards the ruck and making sure you had the speed on the edge, and the Brumbies then are smart enough to see it, take the ball 2 phases to the right and then switch back fast. Tommy Wright with the fast feet, who's had a great impact already in the game, gets the ball out wide and they're over.
Yeah, and the 2 quick points to make is the great positive for the Brumbies is what Peter Hewat alluded to just before, is that's eyes up, good communication, identifying a mismatch and getting the ball where it needs to go. It wasn't huge on deception. It wasn't a great play or anything. It was move the ball to where the opposition are vulnerable and we get a mismatch. So that shows that his players are starting to look up and not just look at space, but look at who's occupying those positions. The other side for the Force is it's a harsh mistake, but that's the level we're at because Longbottom actually works really hard to get around the corner. He works his butt off to get from that line all the way to the other side of the field to defend. Likewise, Braki, he works all the way back to the other side as well, trying to work. So it's not always just about effort. They've overworked there. It's about at this level, at Super Rugby level, at the professional level, it's about efficiency of effort, especially defensively, where all the cogs in the line as part of your system need to be doing their job. So they could have worked less and been more efficient there.
Nice. Mate, let's finish it off. We are at the end of the show now. A couple more minutes to go. Please, guys, any questions you've got, shoot them through. There's a couple of smart comments for you here, Morgs, I'll throw up after this. But our last topic, massive news over the last week. The Daily Telegraph reported that Joseph Suaalii, who's a Year 11 student at the King's School, had had reneged on, or for want of a better word, he was intending to go. That announced previously he was going to sign a $1.7 million 3-year contract with the Rabbitohs and Wayne Bennett. Daily Telegraph wrote a story saying that Rugby Australia had swooped and he was now unlikely to do that, and he was going to join Rugby Australia on a $3 million contract for 3 years, which for a kid who's 16, not yet 17, is enormous. Now, Rugby Australia absolutely came out and refuted that. And to be honest, it was refreshing to see such strong language in the last week or so for the Rugby Australia standing up for themselves. Rob Clark at one point was characterised as calling it a lie, but essentially he said the number was completely wrong. And I think the inference was that number had come from South. So from the guys who had got the whisper that they weren't going to keep this kid, that the number had come from the opposition. Morgs, it was massive news, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And obviously we're talking about the kid here as well, but an exciting prospect. I just think the numbers discussed, there's no way they can be true. We all understand the financial year that Rugby Australia just finished having and that they find themselves in the midst of. I would think that the money would be something like 10% of that. I've seen some, there's no one's quoted here about numbers or anything, but I would have thought something between 200 and 300 a year wouldn't be unreasonable for rugby.
Of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I would think that a lot of that would be something like an Australian Rugby Foundation chipping in. I don't think Rugby Australia would pay it out of their player-generated revenue salary element. And, I'm probably more comfortable playing, getting 10 juniors or 3 juniors or that emerging Wallabies fighting fund. I'm probably more comfortable with the money being spent on those guys than I am topping up top player salaries, because I'm a big believer in the top player salaries should be in direct relationship with how much money the game's generating. That's the whole idea of the CBA and player generated revenue. The players' market value is obviously determined by how much money they bring into the game. So I like that model. If we are in this battle for talent that we believe we are, whether it's against basketball and AFL and rugby league and everything, then I'm pretty happy with people trying to commit funds to keep those guys. My big thing as a classic Wallaby, not just someone who likes watching the game, is that I just hope that we don't forget that we're not rugby league. I don't want to say this in a bad way, but I want this to be, if it's something we're offering this kid, I want it to be holistic. I want it to be, career mentors, money for education. If he wants to do a trade, we don't care what kind of education it is. If he wants to do a trade, if he wants to be a sparky, or if he wants to be a pilot, we don't care what it is, but I want him to be planning for life after rugby, and for rugby to take care of the human being that we're bringing into our game, which I think we do better than anyone else generally. As long as that's part of it for me, then I'm comfortable in us trying to get some talent. I don't want us to waste funds we don't have, but if someone wants to contribute to that, and often what happens with these Australian Rugby Foundation commitments or sponsorship or whatever, however it happens, or third-party deals, whatever those mean, is that it's not an either or. It's not 10 DOs or this player. It's, that someone wants to fund getting this player, but they don't want to fund the other side. And I think both are. I actually think DOs are probably more important than signing one player, but it's not as simple as that. So if it can be financially responsibly done, I think we need to do it, Benny.
Yeah. No, look, and I think I can see how this has been hugely disruptive. Okay, Rugby Australia has significant financial issues to deal with at the moment, and that sort of news hitting the playing base would have been enormous. It would have been something that absolutely would have sent ripples through there. I think Googie Harrison and the Rupa guys would have been quickly involved to see what was going on there. There are a lot of guys who are taking a haircut to make sure the game is okay. That said, if they can find a way to keep investment in multiple parts of the game going, and one of the parts of the game is to bring new talent in or to secure new talent, you can't switch off that tap. So if they can find a way to responsibly do that, I think that's really important. There's one thing I did do though, Morgs, because some people might have found it a little bit confusing. So I've done a little guide here on exactly what went down, because we saw a lot of journos, a lot of rugby league journos after this story came out, expressing a lot of dismay at throwing a lot of money at a young bloke. So I've done a little young player welfare guide, right? When it's clearly what's right and what's wrong. On the left-hand side, you can see there, if you sign a 15-year-old to a record NRL deal, explaining that rugby league's the greatest game of all and saying things like he's a mature, impressive young man making great decisions, that's a big tick. But if you sign a 17-year-old to a record union deal with questionable numbers and, explain how rugby union can offer more opportunities, you say things like he's being led astray, that's not good, all right? So clearly what we've seen from the journos this week is they're all very happy to allow the signing of Suaalii at 1.7 million for 3 years when he was 15, which was a record deal for a kid then. Then all of a sudden they've discovered all of this angst when there might be someone else who has secured him, even if the money suggested is not what it was. So there's a little helpful guide, Morgs. And I also did what we did previous weeks, is I ran that $3 million number through our patented rugby rucker bullshit meter, and mate, off the charts. So the number, mate, it's gone right up to the red. As soon as I ran the number through, mate, it went right up to that end. So, mate, I think we're going to call bullshit on the $3 million, and we hope that instead there's some numbers there that are going to make this kid happy, and a future that's going to make him happy. Because I spoke to a few guys. We heard it from Peter Hewat today. Spoke to Lottie Takiri this week. Actually, I caught up with LT, and he's a former Wallaby, of course, but also a former South player, a Premiership South player, so he knows all the South guys. And he said the buzz around this kid coming through from the South guys was absolutely unbelievable. So look, as you said, let's hope there's a great package they can put together. Let's hope he does stay there, but let's hope they do it in a prudent fashion, which I think is the message that they're trying to get out there at the moment.
Yeah, I think they will. I think the obvious thing is they will, Benny.
That's it. Mate, just a couple of quick questions from the crowd before we go. Ryan Frenny, I think must be a mate of yours, reckons you're looking like Glenn Panaho more every day, and also reckons he can easily take you over 40 metres. Is that true?
Yeah, well, Friends and I played together at the Sunshine Coast Stingrays when I went to the Reds. I chose the battlers from the Sunny Coast as my team. So Friends is actually a good footballer, not much of a bloke, but a good footballer. And Panch was our coach, Glenn Panaho. So when we had dress up, I did dress up as Panch. I didn't have to dress up too much. Didn't have to add too much. But that's a bit of a compliment. He's a good-looking man, Panch. So thanks, Friends.
And mate, you also got a shout out from Keir Anderson. Loved your passion on the sidelines at Coogee last Saturday, mate. How was the shoot shield going?
Mate, it was good. It's been a good 2 weeks. We had the Hunter at Coogee in round 1. It was just great to see them back in the game. And I tell you what, I want one of their jerseys. Interesting jerseys. It's like a limey green, white, and brown horizontal striped jersey. Never seen anything like it before. So it's good to have them in there. They played with a lot of spirit. And then Wicks had a win against Warringah, an excellent Warringah team, really good team, coached by a couple of good guys in Michael Ruthven and Cameron Trelaw. They're a good side, Warringah, so it's a little confidence builder for the blue-collar battlers down at Coogee. It was a good day.
Nice. Well, Morgs, look, that's going to wrap us up for this week. That was the Rugby Ruckus Tight 5. Don't forget to jump onto the rugbyruckus.com and read or write any stories there that you see moving around the rugby world. Morgs, I think that was great to talk to Huey, and we'll be back next week and potentially with another big guest.
Yeah, thanks, Benny.
See you next week, guys.